He doesn't see her hand. That's how it starts. In a glass-walled conference room on the 42nd floor, with a skyline that looks like power and money and promises, the CEO of Northbridge Capital Group is making his rounds. He's smiling for the cameras, because there are always cameras now. There's a photographer at the back pretending not to be there, and 2 assistants hovering with tablets and bottled water. The city glows behind him like a backdrop in a movie. He moves down the line of guests, shaking hands like a politician. Martin, always a pleasure. Emily, love the new fund. Carlos, we need to get you on the golf course this summer. His handshake is firm, his laugh is easy, his eyes do that squint that says, I'm listening, but only because you're important to me right now. And then he gets to her. Amora Johnson. Black woman. Mid-30s. Simple charcoal suit, low bun, no flashy jewelry. Just a slim gold bracelet on her wrist and a leather notebook in her hand. She's not loud, she's not trying to be noticed, but the room bends around her anyway. Because everybody in that room knows who she is. Chief Investment Officer of Horizon State Pension Trust. The woman who controls where tens of billions of dollars sleep at night. The woman whose signature determines whether Northbridge keeps or loses 10 billion of those dollars. 10 billion. Her hand is out, open, waiting. He sees it. You can see the flicker in his eyes if you're watching closely. That half-second calculation. That little tightening at the corners of his mouth. And then? He skips her. Just slides right past. Like her hand is made of air. He laughs and claps the shoulder of the white guy standing 2 steps down. Daniel, my man. Still saving my quarters or what? He moves on, turning his back fully to her, leaving her hand hanging there in the air, fingers slightly curled, palm hovering in nothing. The room feels it. A pause. A crackle of awkward static. The photographer's camera slows, like even the shutter isn't sure what to do. A junior associate at the far end, Jenna, bites the inside of her cheek and looks away. Someone coughs. Someone else clears their throat. The air tightens. Amora's hand lingers a half-second longer than is comfortable. And then, she pulls it back. She doesn't roll her eyes. She doesn't make a scene. She doesn't even change her expression much. She just smooths an invisible wrinkle on her notebook and takes a calm breath. But if you're close enough, if you're really paying attention, you see it. The slight narrowing of her eyes. The way her jaw shifts. The way something in her face closes. Because what he just did. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't a stumble. It wasn't a misstep. It was a message. And what nobody in that room realizes, not the photographer, not the analysts, not even Ethan Cole himself, the great CEO, the man with his name on the wall, what none of them realize is that in that tiny moment, in that ignored handshake, he just started the clock on the end of his empire. He has no idea. He thinks it's just another investor day, another dog and pony show where he dazzles them with charts and buzzwords and leaves with another few billion under management. He doesn't know that the woman he just disrespected holds the power to shut down $10 billion of his firm's assets in minutes. And she will. But to understand how we got here, to understand how a single handshake, or the refusal of one, could topple a giant, you have to go back. Because this didn't start on the 42nd floor. It started much earlier, in places that didn't smell like power and money, in rooms that didn't have skyline views. It started in a small, crowded kitchen with steam on the windows. Rhea, you're thinking too small. The kitchen smells like garlic and onions and frying plantains. There's a pot of stew on the stove, bubbling softly, and the window above the sink is fogged up from the heat. A much younger Amora, everyone calls her Rhea back then, is sitting at the table in a faded college hoodie, textbooks spread out in front of her. Her hair is in a messy puff. There's a pen in her hand and a crease between her eyebrows. Her father, Thomas Johnson, leans against the counter, wiping his hands on a dish towel. He's in his work shirt from the auto shop, the name Thomas stitched above his heart. His fingers are stained with grease that never fully washes off. How is Wall Street not big? She asks, exasperated. That's literally the biggest it gets. Thomas laughs, that deep chesty laugh that fills the room. Wall Street is big for them, he says, nodding toward the TV in the living room where a financial news channel plays on mute. But for you? For us? He shrugs. Big is when you're the one deciding who gets the money. Big is when you're the person they have to call. Her mother, Gloria, walks in with a tray of cut fruit. Your father read one article about pension funds and now he's an expert, she teases, setting the tray down. I read 5 articles, Thomas protests. And I listened to that podcast you made me listen to. The one that put you to sleep. Amora smirks. He points his finger at her. You didn't tell me there'd be so much talking. I thought they'd just tell me which stocks to buy. Amora smiles despite herself, but the crease in her forehead doesn't fully go away. Ria, her mother says softly, sitting across from her. What's really bothering you? Amora sighs and pushes a spreadsheet away from her. It's just... I got the internship offer from Coulton and Pierce. Gloria's eyes light up. The big firm. The big firm, Amora confirms. But when I went to the reception, I was the only black woman in the room. Again. No partners who look like me. No VPs. Just a couple of assistants and one HR lady. Thomas frowns. Did they treat you bad? Not bad, Amora says, making air quotes. Just the usual stuff. Asking if I knew with catering when I walk in with my portfolio. Asking which school I had transferred from even though my name tag clearly says Harvard. Telling me I'm so articulate like that's a surprise. She shrugs like none of it hurts, but it does. You can see it in the way she pokes at the fruit without eating it. Thomas sits down, the chair creaking beneath him. You know what I told that bank manager when he followed me around because he thought I was gonna steal something? You told him if you wanted to steal something, you wouldn't choose his cheap wallet, Amora recites, smiling. She's heard this one. I did, Thomas says proudly. But after that, I opened my account somewhere else. That's the part you always skip. Gloria snorts. After I nagged you for 2 months. The point is, Thomas continues, ignoring her with practiced skill, they don't respect you, you don't feed them. You understand. Dad, I can't just walk away from every space that doesn't feel welcoming, Amora says. If I do that, I'll be unemployed. He leans forward, eyes serious now. I'm not saying walk away from the room. I'm saying, think about when you get to be the one holding the door. When you get to be the one who decides where the money goes. That's real power. Gloria nods. You've always been the kind of girl who will rise. So the question is, what are you going to do when you get there? Fast forward. Years turn into a blur of late nights and early mornings. Amora goes to Wall Street. She learns the language of derivatives and structured products and risk-adjusted returns. She learns how to stay calm when the market loses $1 trillion in a week. She learns how to move in rooms where she's the only one who looks like her, and how to make her presence so undeniable that they have to listen. But the thing she never forgets? That conversation at the kitchen table. The idea of being the one who decides where the money goes. So when the job at Horizon State Pension Trust opens up, Chief Investment Officer, responsible for overseeing more than $150 billion in retirement savings for teachers and firefighters and bus drivers and nurses, she feels something click into place. She's 36 when she walks into Horizon's marble lobby for the first time as CIO. She's wearing another simple charcoal suit, another low bun. The same gold bracelet. It catches the light like a promise. Outside, protesters are marching about something unrelated, their chants echoing faintly through the glass. Inside, the board is waiting. Angela Morales, the board chair, a former teacher with silver hair and sharp eyes, shakes her hand firmly. "We're glad you're here, Ms. Johnson," she says. It's time we had someone who understands not just returns, but responsibility. Responsibility. That word hangs in the air. Because this isn't just money. It's people's futures. It's retirements, college funds, medical bills, late life dignity. It's also leverage. Now, let's talk about Northbridge Capital Group. You know the type. If you've ever seen one of those glossy financial firm promo videos with drone shots of skyscrapers and slow-motion handshakes over glass tables, you've basically met Northbridge. Their logo is everywhere at conferences. Their brochures are full of smiling, diverse stock photo models. They sponsor charity galas and leadership awards and women in finance brunches. On paper, they're perfect. 20 years of strong performance. Offices in 5 countries. A reputation for being innovative and client-focused, and all the buzzwords you expect from a firm managing hundreds of billions. At the top of it all is Ethan Cole. Tall. Perfect hair. That soft tan that says, I ski in the winter and sail in the summer. The kind of guy who never has to shout to be heard, because the room is already tuned to his frequency. He loves to tell the story about how he grew up middle class and worked his way up. What he doesn't always mention is the uncle who gave him his first job on the trading floor, or the family friend who smoothed his path into a top MBA program. But Ethan believes his own legend. Most people like him do. When Amora steps into her new role at Horizon, Northbridge is already one of the fund's biggest external managers. They handle $10 billion worth of assets, $10 billion of the teachers' and firefighters' money, investing it in infrastructure and credit strategies around the world. On her first week, Marcus Reed, her deputy CIO, walks into her office with a neatly organized binder. Northbridge overview, he says, setting it on her desk. He's tall, brown-skinned, with close-cropped hair and a dry sense of humor. You're gonna hear that name a lot. Good or bad, she asks. He makes a seesaw motion with his hand. Historically? Good. Performance has been solid. Fees are a little high, but not outrageous. Their CEO thinks he's God's gift to capital markets, but that's standard. The board loves them because they've delivered. Amora flips through the binder. There are performance charts, risk reports, ESG summaries. The numbers are, indeed, good. But, she asks, because there's always a but. Marcus hesitates. There have been some culture complaints from their junior staff. A couple of analysts came to us off the record. Nothing that rises to the level of a formal complaint, but enough smoke that we should at least look for fire. She raises an eyebrow. What kind of smoke? He shrugs. The usual. Boys' club stuff. Jokes that cross the line. Promotions that always seem to go to the same kind of person. One of their former black female associates said she felt like she was always in the room, but never really in the room, if you know what I mean. Oh, she knows. She knows all too well. Are they aware these concerns have reached us? Amora asks. Marcus smirks. I'm sure they suspect. But as long as the check's clear and the returns are good, they probably think no one will rock the boat. Amora closes the binder slowly. Then they haven't met me yet, she says. One of the first things Amora does at Horizon is introduce a new framework, a values-based governance policy. It's not just about environmental, social, and governance scores. Everyone is doing that now. It's about something deeper. How do these firms treat people? What do their leadership teams look like? What happens when someone calls out a problem? We're not just buying numbers, she tells the board at her first major meeting. We're buying judgment. We're buying integrity. We're buying cultures that either uplift people or grind them down. And our beneficiaries are watching where their money sleeps at night. Some of the older trustees shift in their chairs, a little uncomfortable. This is new language for some of them. But Angela Morales nods firmly. We can't talk about long-term returns without talking about long-term harm, she says. I support this. The policy is simple on paper, complicated in practice. Every external manager, including Northbridge, will be evaluated not only on performance and fees, but also on diversity in leadership, track record on discrimination and harassment, community impact, and alignment with Horizon's stated values. Some firms welcome the new framework. They send detailed diversity reports, invite Horizon to meet with their employee resource groups, talk openly about where they've failed and what they're doing to improve. Other firms roll their eyes in private and hire consultants to pretty up their image. Guess which category Northbridge falls into? 2 months into her new role, Amora flies out with Marcus and a small Horizon team to meet Northbridge leadership at their headquarters. The lobby is all marble and glass and art pieces that look like they cost more than most people's homes. A young receptionist with a polite smile offers them sparkling water. "Ms. Johnson, Mr. Reed, welcome to Northbridge," she says. "They're just finishing up with another client. Can I get you anything while you wait?" "We're fine, thank you," Amora says. As they sit, Marcus leans over. $10 says there's a diversity is our strength poster somewhere on this floor, he whispers. "Oh, definitely," Amora murmurs. Right next to a leadership page full of the same face in different suits. A door opens, and a group of men in expensive suits walk out, laughing loudly. One of them, a middle-aged man with slick-back hair, stops when he sees Amora. "You must be Horizon," he says. "I'm guessing you're with facilities? We've been meaning to talk about the air conditioning on this floor." Marcus's smile freezes. Amora keeps her tone even. "No. I'm the Chief Investment Officer." There's a split second where his face goes blank, recalibrating. Then he laughs too loudly. "Oh. My mistake. Of course. Nice to meet you. I'm Noah. Noah Stein, COO. Didn't expect." He cuts off the sentence before he says someone like you, but the words hang there anyway. Amora shakes his hand, grip steady. "Didn't expect us to be early," she offers, letting him off the hook. "Sort of." Yes, exactly," Noah says. "Right this way." As they walk down the hallway, they pass a framed photo, a group shot of Northbridge's executive team. It's a sea of pale faces in dark suits. 2 women. 0 black executives. There, in the corner of the frame, is Ethan Cole, smiling like a man who has never heard the word no. The conference room they're led into is huge, with floor-to-ceiling windows that make the city look like a diorama. There's a long table with glossy reports laid out at each seat. After a few minutes, Ethan enters. "Angela." "Marcus. So great to see you again," he booms, striding in with the confidence of someone who is used to being the center of gravity. He shakes Marcus's hand, claps Noah on the back, nods to another trustee who joined them. Then he turns to Amora. For a second, you can see him hesitate. He knows who she is. He's been briefed. He's read the memos. He knows Horizon just hired a new CIO and that she's the one driving this new values-based nonsense that his people have been complaining about. He knows she's important. But he also knows something else: men like him don't have to respect women like her. Not really. Not in their bones. So his smile doesn't quite reach his eyes. "Ah," he says. "You must be Amira." "Amora," she corrects calmly, standing to meet his gaze. Right, Amora." "Of course," he says, waving it off like the difference between her actual name and what he decided to call her is a typo, not a person. "Welcome to Northbridge." His handshake is just a touch weaker than the ones he gave Marcus and the others. It's subtle, but she notices. "Thank you for having us," she replies. They sit. The presentation begins. For the next hour, it's what you'd expect: performance charts, bar graphs, bullet points about risk management and downside protection. Ethan is in his element, walking them through slides, telling polished stories about how Northbridge navigated volatility and protected capital. If you only listened to the numbers, you'd think everything was perfect. But Amora isn't just listening to the numbers. She's listening to the pauses. The jokes. The way certain people get cut off more quickly than others. The way Noah's eyes slide past her when he answers a question, directing the response to Marcus or the older male trustee instead. She asks pointed questions. What does your promotion pipeline look like for your Black and Latino analysts? How many people of color are on your investment committee? Can you walk me through your process for handling discrimination complaints internally? Ethan answers with polished vagueness. We recruit from all the top schools. We're committed to meritocracy. We take all concerns very seriously. He says a lot of words without saying much of anything. At one point, when she pushes on a specific statistic in their diversity report, he smiles. You really did your homework, he says, like it's a charming surprise. That is my job, she replies, no smile. And these are our beneficiaries' lives. There's a barely perceptible shift in his expression. A flash of annoyance before he smooths it away. After the meeting, on the flight home, Marcus turns to her. So, he asks. What do you think? She gazes out the window at the clouds for a long moment. On paper, they're fine, she says. But my mother always says, if someone shows you who they are, listen. And what did they show you? Marcus asks. She thinks of the framed photo on the wall. The way Noah assumed she worked in facilities. The way Ethan mispronounced her name and then treated her questions like an inconvenience. They showed me they're very comfortable, she says. I'm very sure we're not going anywhere. Marcus nods slowly. So we remind them we can. If you're still watching at this point, I want you to think about something. How many times have you been in a room where you could feel you weren't really being seen? Maybe it was because of your race, your gender, your accent, your age, your disability, your background. You're there. You're qualified. You've earned your seat. But the people across from you act like you're extra. They don't say it out loud, of course. But you feel it in the way they talk around you instead of to you. In the assumptions they make before you've said a word. If you've been there, tell me in the comments what that felt like. Because that's where Amora is right now. And this story, it's about what happens when someone in that position finally has enough power to do something about it. Over the next year, Amora quietly builds her case. She doesn't storm into the boardroom and demand they drop Northbridge. That's not how this works. $10 billion is not a coffee order you can cancel because the barista gave you attitude. She starts with data. She asks Northbridge to provide more detailed information about their internal culture, their promotion rates, their retention numbers for women and people of color. She asks for breakdowns of who leads which teams, who sits on what committee. She asks the same of every firm they work with, not just Northbridge. Fair is fair. Some firms respond within weeks with detailed, transparent reports. Northbridge sends a glossy PDF with stock photos and percentages that don't quite add up if you look too closely. She notices. Then she talks to people. She has quiet coffees with former Northbridge employees, some of whom now work at other firms that manage Horizon's money. What was it like there, she asks, stirring her tea slowly. Fine, one black woman, a former associate, says at first. You know. The usual. She doesn't push. She just waits. After a moment, the woman sighs. Okay. It was exhausting, she admits. Being mistaken for support staff all the time. Getting excluded from client dinners because they didn't think I'd be interested in the steakhouse. Watching less qualified guys get pushed up because they were a better fit. She shrugs, but her eyes shine. You start to feel like you're going crazy. Like maybe you're overreacting. Until you leave and realize how heavy it was. Amora writes it down, word for word. Another former employee, a Latino risk analyst, tells her they love to parade diversity in front of clients. But internally? The moment you speak up, you get labeled difficult. I saw it happen. Quietly, of course. No one ever puts it in an email. More smoke. More hints of fire. And through it all, Northbridge keeps sending her performance reports that say, in effect, we're making you money. Isn't that enough? But here's the thing about Amora. She's not just chasing basis points. She's trying to keep a promise to her parents, to herself, and now to millions of pensioners she'll never meet. She remembers her father saying, they don't respect you, you don't feed them. She can't forget it. Which brings us back to that day. The Investor Summit. Horizon is hosting a major event where all their largest managers are invited to present. The room is full of people who make markets move, fund managers, board members, policy advisors, journalists lurking near the back. Northbridge has a prime slot. They're still one of Horizon's biggest managers, and Horizon plays fair. Until decisions change, they'll be treated like everyone else. Ethan arrives late. Of course he does. He walks in with that loose, easy swagger of someone who expects the room to wait for him. He's coming straight from a TV interview, his assistant whispers. The cameras love him. As he moves down the line of Horizon representatives and other guests before the session, the photographer snaps pictures. Shake. Smile. Shake. Smile. And then he gets to Amora. Her hand is out. He sees it. And for whatever reason, ego, resentment, unconscious bias, all of the above, he chooses not to take it. He skips right past her. Maybe, in his mind, it's nothing. A split-second decision. An oversight. Maybe he'll tell himself that later. But for the people in that room who are paying attention, it's everything. Marcus sees it. His eyes flash, but he says nothing. Not yet. Jenna, the young analyst near the end of the line, sees it. Her stomach drops. Because she knows what it feels like to be invisible, and she's watching it happen in the brightest room in the building. Angela sees it. Her jaw tightens. The photographer sees it through the lens. His finger hesitates on the shutter, but he keeps clicking because that's his job. The camera doesn't care about discomfort. It just records. And Amora? She feels the heat rise in her chest. She feels the weight of every time she's been mistaken for someone's assistant. Every time someone has called her aggressive for being direct. Every time someone has praised her composure like it's a consolation prize for what she has to endure. For a split second, she imagines grabbing his arm and saying, "Excuse me. My hand is right here." But she doesn't. Because in that moment, she remembers something more powerful than an argument. She remembers what she controls. Not his behavior. Not his respect. But something he cares about a lot more than a handshake. His money. She lets her hand drop. The meeting proceeds. Northbridge does their song and dance. Ethan talks about strong partnerships and shared values with a straight face. When it's her turn to speak on a panel about responsible investing, she doesn't mention him. She doesn't call him out by name. She talks instead about trust. Trust isn't only about performance, she says into the microphone, her voice calm but firm. Trust is about knowing that when no one is watching, the people managing your money are acting in alignment with your values. Respect isn't a slide in a deck. It's how people behave when they think it won't cost them anything. The room quiets. Ethan shifts slightly in his chair on stage, as if something in her words pricks him, but he doesn't quite know why. After the summit, in the privacy of the boardroom, Angela closes the door and turns to Amora. "I saw what happened," she says simply. Amora nods, staring at the table. "I know. Was it enough to act?" Angela asks. Amora exhales slowly. The handshake. She shakes her head. On its own? No. If we moved 10 billion for every microaggression, we'd be trading managers every week. Then what are you going to do? Angela asks. Amora looks up, her eyes steady now. I'm going to take this as the final data point, she says. The last piece of evidence. And then? I'm going to protect our people. If you've ever seen someone swallow an insult because the room demanded their professionalism, you know what this feels like. You know that quiet burn. You know the difference between what you want to do and what you can do if you want to keep your job, your reputation, your sanity. So let me ask you, if you were Amora, what would you do next? Would you let it slide because the returns were good? Or would you believe what this man just showed you about who he is? Tell me in the comments. I really want to know. Because Amora? She makes a choice. And it's a big one. A week after the summit, Amora calls an internal meeting. In the conference room at Horizon, the mood is serious. On the screen at the front is a simple title slide. Northbridge Capital Group, Strategic Review. Marcus is there. Angela is there. Several trustees join via video. There's a quiet tension in the air. Amora stands at the head of the table, remote in hand. Before we begin, she says, I want to be very clear about something. We are not here because of one awkward moment at a summit. We are not here because of anyone's ego, not mine, not theirs. We are here because we have a fiduciary duty to our beneficiaries. And that duty includes assessing not just returns, but risk. Culture risk. Governance risk. Alignment risk. She clicks. Slide after slide appears. The data she's been quietly collecting for months finally has its day in the sun. Promotion rates by race and gender. Leadership composition. Whistleblower statistics. Turnover rates in key teams. Comparisons with other firms managing similar mandates. Northbridge has delivered strong performance, she acknowledges, pointing to a chart that shows solid returns over 10 years. But performance alone is not the whole story. She shows them internal documents, anonymized comments from former employees, patterns in their hiring. Then she shows something else. Emails. Not Northbridge's, of course. She doesn't have those. But messages from Horizon staff who interacted with them. Notes about meetings where junior staff from underrepresented groups were sidelined. Recordings of jokes made at client dinners. We love working with Horizon, Amora reads from one note. You all make us look so progressive. Especially with your new CIO. She's like diversity and alpha in one package. She looks up. The room is quiet. I'm not here to be anyone's package, she says. There's a flicker of anger in her voice now, the first real crack in her composure. Then she breathes and continues. Now, let me show you something else. Click. A slide appears with a table of alternative managers, firms with similar strategies to Northbridge, similar risk profiles, similar track records of performance, and better governance scores. Over the past 6 months, we've been quietly running parallel analyses, she explains. Stress testing what would happen if we reduced or removed our allocation to Northbridge and reallocated to other managers. The results show that we can maintain, and in some cases slightly improve, our risk-adjusted return expectations while working with partners whose cultures better align with our values. A trustee on the screen, Mr. Daniels, leans forward. Are you saying we should fire Northbridge? I'm saying we should prepare to, Amora replies. Not out of spite. Not because of a handshake. But because we have evidence that their internal culture poses long-term risk to our beneficiaries. We're seeing signs of potential reputational risk. And their unwillingness to engage meaningfully on these issues, despite repeated invitations, is itself a data point. Another trustee, Ms. Patel, speaks up. The optics of this could be how intense, she says. They're big. Well respected. If we pull 10 billion, people will notice. Yes, Amora says. They will. And they'll also notice why. That's the thing. This is not just about money. It's about the signal that money sends. Angela clears her throat. What's your recommendation, Ms. Johnson? Amora looks around the room, meeting each pair of eyes briefly. My recommendation, she says, is that we give Northbridge one last chance to demonstrate alignment. A real chance. Not a glossy PDF. A concrete plan with timelines and accountability. We schedule a meeting with their full leadership team. We lay out our concerns. We remind them of the scale of our mandate. And we ask them, plainly, are you willing to change? And if they say no, Marcus asks quietly. Then we do what we were hired to do, she says. We protect our people's money. Even if it makes powerful men uncomfortable. The meeting is set for a Tuesday. In the days leading up to it, there are late-night prep sessions, drafts of talking points, whispered worries about market reaction if Horizon pulls the plug. Marcus finds Amora in her office one evening, the lights low, the city twinkling outside. You okay? He asks, leaning against the doorframe. She rubs her temples. I keep thinking about all the people who work at Northbridge who have nothing to do with Ethan's ego, she says. The analysts, the assistants, the janitors. Our decision will hit them too. Marcus nods. That's true, he says. But what about their bosses? What about the culture those people have to live in every day? Sometimes shaking the tree is the only way to knock the rotten fruit loose. She smiles weakly. You and your metaphors. He grins. I've been saving that one. She sobers. Seriously, Marcus. Do you think I'm making this too personal? He shakes his head. I think this was personal long before you walked into that conference room, he says. You're just the first person in your seat who's willing to call it what it is. And by the way, any man who can't bring himself to shake the hand of the woman who controls 10 billion of his assets is not a man we should trust with our teacher's retirement. She exhales. Okay, she says. Let's do this. On Tuesday, Northbridge's leadership arrives at Horizon's headquarters. Ethan. Noah. Their head of HR. Their general counsel. They look slightly more tense than usual. Their smiles are just a bit too bright. In the boardroom, everyone sits. There's no investor relations fluff this time. No performance decks. Just a simple agenda on the table. 1. Culture and governance concerns. 2. Horizon's values alignment policy. 3. Northbridge response and plan. Amora begins. Thank you for coming, she says. I'll be direct. Over the past year, we've been evaluating all our managers under our updated values alignment policy. We've identified several areas of concern regarding Northbridge's culture and governance. Today, we'd like to discuss those with you and hear how you intend to address them. Ethan nods, lips pressed together. We appreciate the transparency, he says. As you know, we value our relationship with Horizon. Good, Amora says. Then you'll understand why this conversation is necessary. She lays it out. Not angrily. Not emotionally. Just clearly. The lack of diversity in leadership. The experiences shared by former employees. The dismissive responses to previous inquiries. The microaggressions in professional settings. The patterns that, taken together, form a picture. And I want to be clear, she adds. This is not about quotas. This is about risk. A culture that dismisses or disrespects people based on who they are is a culture that will eventually make bad decisions. Decisions that could harm our beneficiaries. Ethan listens, jaw tight. When she finishes, he leans forward. We hear you, he says. We truly value this partnership and don't want to lose it. But I have to say, sometimes I worry that this focus on identity and optics can distract from performance. At the end of the day, aren't your teachers and firefighters most interested in returns? There it is. The argument. Performance over people. Money over dignity. Amora doesn't flinch. Our beneficiaries, she replies, are interested in retiring with security and dignity. That includes knowing their money is not supporting systems that harm people who look like them. It's not either or. It's both and. Noah jumps in. Look, we have diversity initiatives, he says quickly. We have mentorship programs. We sponsor networks. With respect, Amora cuts in, mentorship programs are not the same as power. I'm asking about who makes decisions. Who sets pay? Who decides who gets promoted? Your own reports show that Black and Latino employees are leaving at higher rates than their peers. Why is that? There's a beat of silence. Their head of HR clears her throat. We're working on better engagement strategies, she says. We've hired a consultant to help us with unconscious bias. Unconscious bias training is not a strategy, Amora says, voice still calm. It's a slide in a deck. We need more than that. The room is thick with tension now. Angela watches quietly, letting Amora lead. Finally, Ethan sighs. Let me be blunt, he says. We've delivered exceptional performance for Horizon. We're proud of that. And we think it should carry some weight. We can commit to looking at some of these issues more closely. Maybe set some targets. But we can't overhaul our entire culture overnight just because one client doesn't like our optics. One client. Marcus repeats, raising an eyebrow. We're $10 billion of your AUM. Ethan looks at him, then back at Amora. We value that. Truly, he says. But we also have other clients to consider. We can't be beholden to every social trend that comes along. Amora tilts her head. Respecting the people who work for you is a social trend, she asks lightly. He opens his mouth, then shuts it. There's a long pause. Let me put it simply, Amora says. We are looking for partners who see diversity and respect not as a burden, but as a strength. Partners who don't need to be dragged into doing the right thing. We gave you this meeting because we believed you might be willing to be that partner. She looks him in the eye. Are you? Ethan's jaw works. He looks at Noah. At HR. At his counsel. And then he makes the worst mistake of his career. He shrugs. We can make some adjustments, he says. But if you're asking us to overhaul who we are as a firm to satisfy a political agenda, I'm not sure that's realistic. Or wise. Our job is to generate returns. The temperature in the room drops 10 degrees. Angela leans forward, her voice soft but steel-edged. Our agenda, she says, is to ensure the people who taught our children and kept our streets safe can afford to retire. We decide what that agenda requires. Not you. The meeting ends shortly after. They say polite goodbye. Hands are shaken. This time, Ethan does take Amora's hand. It's too late. That night, the Horizon board meets in closed session. They debate. They worry about market reaction. They worry about headlines. They worry about the risk of being seen as too political. But they also think about the stories Amora shared. The numbers. The patterns. The arrogance they just witnessed firsthand. Finally, Angela turns to Amora. As CIO, what is your formal recommendation? She asks. Amora's heart beats steady. She thinks about her parents, their modest little kitchen, the heat from the stove. She thinks about every young professional who ever felt small in rooms like the one she just left. My recommendation, she says clearly, is that we terminate our mandate with Northbridge Capital Group and reallocate those assets to managers who align with our performance needs and our values. And the timeline? Ms. Patel asks. Quickly, Amora says. Phased over days and weeks to avoid market disruption, but with a clear message. This is not a negotiation tactic. It's a decision. There's a long silence. Then, one by one, the trustees nod. So be it, Angela says. The motion passes. Just like that, $10 billion starts to move. If you believe people and companies should be held accountable for how they treat others, go ahead and hit that like button. Because what happens next? That's where the real consequences begin. And trust me, no one in Ethan's world is ready. On a quiet Thursday morning, an internal email goes out to Horizon staff and board members. Effective immediately, Horizon State Pension Trust will be terminating its investment management agreement with Northbridge Capital Group and reallocating those assets to alternative managers in accordance with our investment policy statement and values alignment framework. The message is confidential, but of course, nothing stays confidential for long in the world of high finance. By midday, Northbridge trading desk notices unusual patterns. "Hey, we're getting unusually large redemption requests from the Horizon accounts," a portfolio manager says, frowning at his screen. "How large?" Noah asks, walking over. "Very large," the PM replies. "They're unwinding entire positions." Noah feels a prickle of unease. "Call them," he says. "Find out what's going on." Amora answers the call in her office, putting it on speaker with Marcus present. "Ms. Johnson," Noah says. "We're seeing significant redemption activity from your accounts. Is this a mistake?" "No," she says calmly. "It's not a mistake. The Horizon board has decided to terminate our relationship with Northbridge." There's a beat of stunned silence. "Excuse me," Noah says. We just met. We were under the impression." "I was very clear in that meeting," Amora says. "We needed a concrete plan for addressing the cultural and governance issues we identified. Mr. Cole made it clear that Northbridge was not prepared to make the necessary changes." Noah's voice tightens. "Look, I think there's been a misunderstanding. We're committed to diversity. We've signed all the pledges. This decision is final," Amora says. "We're proceeding in a way that minimizes market disruption. You'll receive formal notice from our legal team shortly." "What about performance?" he demands. "We've delivered excellent returns for you." "And we appreciate that," she replies. "However, performance without alignment is not enough for us. We wish you the best." She hangs up. Marcus lets out a slow whistle. "Well," he says. "That's that." "It's not that yet," Amora says, looking out at the city. "This is just the first domino." At Northbridge, chaos spreads. Noah bursts into Ethan's office, face pale. "They're pulling out," he says. "Horizon. The whole 10 billion. Ethan looks up slowly from his desk. "That's not possible," he says. "We just met with them." "It's done," Noah insists. "They said the board voted." They're citing culture and governance misalignment. For the first time, real fear flickers across Ethan's face. 10 billion, he repeats. That's our largest single client." "Exactly," Noah says. "If this gets out, other clients will start asking questions." "The press?" "Then it won't get out," Ethan snaps. "We handle this quietly. Call them back. Offer fee reductions. Incentives. We can fix this." "They said the decision is final," Noah says. "And Ethan?" "I think they're prepared to talk about why." Ethan stands up so abruptly his chair skids back. He thinks about that summit. The cameras. The panel. The whisper campaigns. He remembers ignoring her hand. He tells himself it wasn't that. It couldn't be that. Not really. But a part of him wonders. Just for a second. News rarely breaks in a single big headline. It starts as a whisper. An industry reporter gets a tip. A trader hears something from a friend. A line in an earnings call sounds off. Within a week, a financial news site publishes a short piece. Sources indicate that Horizon State Pension Trust, one of Northbridge Capital Group's largest clients, is in the process of redeeming a significant portion of its assets. The reason for this move is reportedly tied not to performance, but to concerns about values alignment and corporate culture. The article is light on detail, but heavy on implications. What does values alignment mean? One commentator asks on a finance podcast. Are we talking ESG stuff? Diversity issues? Something more serious? Other clients of Northbridge start calling. Is this true? They ask. Are we next? Internally, Northbridge scrambles. HR rushes out memos about new diversity initiatives. Emails go around about forming a culture task force. A town hall is scheduled where Ethan gives a strained speech about evolving our practices while staying true to our core mission. But the timing is bad. The world has changed. People are tired. Tired of glossy promises that don't match lived reality. Tired of hearing "we'll look into it" while nothing happens. One of Northbridge's own employees leaks an internal memo to a journalist. The memo mentions concerns raised by Horizon regarding representation and cultural issues. Suddenly, the story has fuel. A major newspaper runs a piece. $10 billion statement, pension giant dumps manager over culture concerns. They quote anonymous former employees. They mention a certain investor summit where a senior executive reportedly snubbed a prominent black female CIO in a public setting. They don't have a photo. Yet. But remember that photographer at the summit? The one whose lens captured the moment when Ethan slid past Amora's extended hand. He's a freelancer. And freelancers sell their work. Soon, there's a picture circulating quietly in industry circles. In it, you can clearly see Amora's hand outstretched, Ethan's gaze turned away, his body already moving past her. The photographer didn't intend to capture a scandal. He just caught a moment. The story makes that moment mean something. Online, people talk. On a niche finance forum, someone posts the photo with the caption, "This the guy who just lost $10 billion in assets." The comments are brutal. Imagine fumbling $10 billion because you couldn't shake a black woman's hand. He thought she was nobody. Turns out she was the bag. This is what institutional racism looks like. Not slurs. Just accidents that tell you exactly how they see you. Ethan's PR team goes into overdrive. It was an innocent mistake, they insist in carefully worded statements. Mr. Cole has nothing but respect for Ms. Johnson and Horizon. We are committed to learning and growing from this experience. But it's too late. The narrative has taken shape. He's no longer the golden boy CEO who can do no wrong. He's the man who refused to shake the hand of the black woman who controlled $10 billion of his assets and paid the price. If you've ever watched someone get away with poor behavior over and over, you know how it feels when the consequences finally show up. It can be messy. It can be complicated. Sometimes innocent people get caught in the blast radius. But there's also a strange, quiet satisfaction in seeing the universe, for once, send a bill to the right address. If you're still with me, let me know in the comments, do you think this kind of money talk is the only thing that makes powerful people change? Or can hearts change without a loss like this? Inside Northbridge, the impact is immediate. $10 billion is not just a number on a screen. It's revenue. It's bonuses. It's future fundraising pitches that now sound shaky. Analysts start updating projection models with stressful new assumptions. If we assume a 30% chance that other large clients follow Horizon's lead, one says in a meeting, trailing off as the implications hit the room. Their compliance department warns that they'll need to disclose material client loss in their next public filings. Their head of investor relations says quietly, we should prepare for questions about culture in our next earnings call. Ethan stares at the conference room wall like he can will this not to be happening. He thinks about calling Amora. He even drafts an email late one night. Amora. I wanted to reach out personally to apologize if my actions at the summit were perceived as disrespectful. That was never my intent. I value our relationship and would welcome the opportunity to discuss a path forward. He deletes it. His pride won't let him hit send. Instead, he doubles down in public while privately seething. This is political, he tells a friendly journalist off the record. We're being penalized for not jumping through the latest social hoop. The journalist doesn't print that quote, but she hears the tone. And tone has a way of slipping through, even when the words are polished. At Horizon, life goes on. The markets move. Other managers pitch. Teachers keep teaching. Firefighters keep responding to calls. Bus drivers keep driving their routes. Most of them have no idea that the money funding their future is shifting quietly from one firm to another. They don't know about Ethan. They don't know about the handshake. But they do know this. Their pension fund just released a statement about aligning investments with values of equity and respect. They see headlines about their retirement system taking a stand. Some of them share the articles on social media with a simple caption. Proud of this. In the cafeteria at Horizon's building, a young black receptionist, Kayla, pulls up the article on her phone and smiles. She's had her own experiences with people walking past her like she's invisible. Seeing someone in power take a stand for dignity? It means something, even if she can't put it into numbers. In her office, Amora stares at the same article, but her expression is more complicated. She feels relief. But she also feels, wait. The comments online are wild, Marcus says, leaning in her doorway. They've turned you into a legend. I'm not interested in being a legend, she says. I'm interested in doing my job. He walks in and sits down. You did. She hesitates. Did we hurt people who didn't deserve it? She asks quietly. He nods slowly. Probably, he says. Some analysts will lose bonuses. Some assistants might get laid off if their revenue dips. That's the ugly part of this system. Decisions at the top roll downhill. She closes her eyes briefly. But, he continues, you also sent a message to every CEO who thinks they can treat people any kind of way as long as they hit their numbers. That's not nothing. She opens her eyes. On her desk is a photo of her parents, taken at her CIO swearing-in ceremony. Her father is wearing his best suit, tie slightly crooked. Her mother's eyes are bright with pride. If they could see this headline, she says softly. They can, Marcus says. They raise you your whole life for moments like this. A few weeks later, Amora gets an unexpected email. Subject line, request for meeting, Ethan Cole. For a moment, she considers ignoring it. But she doesn't believe in unfinished business. So she agrees. They meet in a small, neutral conference room at Horizon. No press. No board. Just the two of them. Ethan looks tired. The strain of the past weeks has etched lines into his face that weren't there before. Thank you for seeing me, he says, sitting down. She nods. What can I do for you, Mr. Cole? He winces slightly at the formality, but doesn't correct her. I wanted to apologize, he says. Properly. For everything. She waits. He takes a breath. When we met at the summit, I was distracted, he says. I didn't mean to ignore your hand. I've replayed that moment 1,000 times. It looks terrible. I see that now. It looked like what it was, she replies. A choice. He flinches. In my world, I've gotten used to certain patterns, he says haltingly. Rooms that look a certain way. People who look a certain way. I pride myself on treating everyone the same, but the truth is, I didn't treat you the same. Not even close. He rubs his temples. Losing your mandate has been humbling, he says. Not just financially. Though, believe me, that part hurts. But in the way my own people look at me now. The questions they're asking. The things they're telling me they were too afraid to say before. He looks up at her. I'm not asking you to reverse your decision, he says. I know that's done. I know it should be done. I'm asking you if you're willing to tell me the truth. The truth about what it's like to be you in rooms run by people like me. Because clearly, I haven't been listening. This is not a moment of triumph. It's not a dramatic grovel. It's a man whose world has cracked open a little, sitting with the pieces. Amora studies him. "You're not the first person to ignore me," she says. "You won't be the last. This isn't about my feelings. It's about patterns. You represent a culture that thinks respect is optional for people who don't look like you. That thinks a handshake is just a formality, not a signal. That thinks numbers excuse everything." He nods slowly. "I grew up watching my father get followed around stores," she continues. "Watched him be talked down to by bank managers while he was handing over his hard-earned money. He taught me that if they don't respect you, you don't feed them. That's what this was for me." She leans forward slightly. "You want the truth?" she asks. "The truth is, you lost $10 billion not because of one moment, but because that moment told us everything we needed to know about what would happen when no one was watching. And we can't afford that risk. Not for our people." He swallows. "I understand," he says quietly. "Or at least, I'm beginning to." She nods. "Then use it," she says. "If you really want to change, don't do it to win us back. Don't turn your black employees into props in some redemption story. Look at who's in the room when decisions are made. Look at who gets interrupted. Who gets promoted? Who gets pushed out? And then, do the hard, boring work of changing it." He manages a small, bitter smile. "Harder than launching a new fund," he says. "Much," she agrees. He stands. "Thank you," he says. "For your honesty. And for holding us accountable." She doesn't say "you're welcome." She just nods. As he leaves, she feels something loosen in her chest. Not forgiveness, exactly. Not yet. But something like closure. A year passes. Northbridge is no longer the untouchable giant it once was. The loss of Horizon triggers other clients to examine their own relationships. Some quietly move portions of their funds elsewhere. Others stay, but insist on deep cultural changes. Under pressure from the board, Ethan steps down as CEO. He remains on as an advisor for a time, but his era of unchecked authority is over. Northbridge appoints a new CEO, Maya Liang, a seasoned executive with a reputation for turning around toxic cultures. She's not a token. She's a force. Her first act is to commission a brutally honest internal review, led by an independent firm, into Northbridge's culture and governance. The report is ugly. It lists all the things people had been whispering about for years, now in black and white. Biased evaluations. Homogeneous leadership. Retaliation against those who spoke up. Maya doesn't bury it. She gives every employee access to a summary. Then she stands up at an all-hands meeting and says, "We are going to change." Not because of headlines. Because this is wrong. And because it's bad business. Our job is to manage risk. This culture is a risk. Change is slow. It always is. Some old guard executives leave, unable to adjust. New people are brought in. Policies are rewritten. More importantly, practices are changed. Promotion panels are diversified. Pay equity audits are conducted. Employee resource groups are given budgets and real influence. One day, a young black analyst at Northbridge sits at her desk, reading an article about how Maya met privately with a group of junior staff to hear their stories. She thinks, maybe I'll stay a little longer and see if this is real. Meanwhile, at Horizon, the reallocated $10 billion is performing well. The new managers they've chosen are not perfect, they are still human, still part of the same flawed system, but they are trying. And when issues arise, they respond with humility, not defensiveness. Amora's work doesn't get easier. Every decision is still a trade-off. Every move has consequences. But she has a framework now. A compass. In her rare quiet moments, she goes to visit her parents. They still live in the same modest house, with the same tiny kitchen. One Sunday afternoon, she sits at the table while her mother chops vegetables. "I saw you on the news again," Gloria says, glancing at her phone. They were talking about that firm you dropped. Calling you the woman who made 10 billion walk out the door. Sounds more dramatic than it felt, Amora says. It was a lot of paperwork. Her father chuckles from his armchair. Paperwork that made some people sweat, I bet, he says. She smiles. Yeah, she says. It did. He sets his newspaper down and looks at her. You remember what I told you, he says. About not feeding people who don't respect you. I do, she says. He nods. You took that and made it much bigger than I ever imagined, he says. I was just talking about my checking account. She laughs, eye stinging. It's still the same thing, she says. Just different numbers. He stands and walks over, placing a hand on her shoulder. I'm proud of you, Rhea, he says softly. Not because you moved all that money. Because you remembered who it belonged to. So, what do we do with this story? It's easy to frame it as a simple tale. Arrogant CEO snubs black woman. Black woman gets revenge. Justice served. Roll credits. But real life, even in a fictional story like this, is more complicated. Yes, Ethan's actions had consequences. Yes, Amora used her power to hold someone accountable. Yes, $10 billion moved because respect was not optional anymore. But along the way, innocent people felt the shockwaves. Jobs were at risk. Lives were disrupted. There was no perfectly clean outcome. That's how systems work. They spread both harm and healing far beyond the main characters. What matters, though, is this. For once, the person who thought he could act without consequence did face consequences. Not because someone yelled the loudest. Not because of cancel culture. But because a black woman in a position of power quietly said, no more. Not with our money. She didn't throw a public tantrum. She didn't humiliate him in front of cameras. She did her homework. She gathered her facts. She used the leverage she had to protect the people who trusted her. And in doing so, she sent a message. Respect is not a side dish. It's not a nice to have. It's not something you save for people who look like you or who can advance your career. Respect is part of the cost of doing business. You want someone's money? You respect them. You respect people who look like them. You build a place where people like them can thrive. Or eventually, that money will walk. That's the lesson here. For CEOs. For managers. For all of us. Because you might not be managing $10 billion. You might not be sitting in boardrooms or signing off on giant mandates. But you do have power. You have power over how you treat the people whose hands you shake or don't shake. You have power over who you pay attention to in a meeting. Who you listen to. Who you defend when they're being dismissed. You have power over whether you're like Ethan, shrugging off other people's reality until the consequences hit. Or like Amora, holding the line quietly but firmly, even when it's uncomfortable. So ask yourself. In your own life, your own workplace, your own family, whose hand have you been ignoring? Whose presence have you treated like it's optional? And if you're the one who's been ignored, like Amora was in that room, what power do you have that you might not even realize yet? Maybe it's not billions of dollars. Maybe it's your voice. Your story. Your refusal to laugh along with the joke this time. Your decision to walk away from places that don't value you. It all counts. If you're still here with me, watching to the end, I want to hear from you. Have you ever been in a situation where someone's quiet disrespect told you everything you needed to know about them? What did you do? Did you stay? Did you leave? Did you speak up? Tell me in the comments. And if you believe that respect should never depend on how powerful someone looks, but on how human they are, go ahead and hit that like button. Subscribe for more real lifestyle stories like this, stories about power, consequences, dignity, and people who choose to do the hard, right thing even when no one's clapping. Because at the end of the day, this story isn't just about a CEO who refused to shake a black woman's hand. It's about what happened when that black woman remembered that her hand also held the power to move $10 billion. And she chose to use it. Not to destroy, but to demand better.